Hi, this is Karin from the Huntley Library, and today on Teen Crafternoon we are going to be adding ourselves to famous works of art. So let's get some supplies together and we can get started. For this project you're going to need some kind of canvas. I'm going to be using canvas board, but you could also use a heavy cardboard if you don't have canvas board. You're going to need a kind of glue to glue down the artwork that you're using and the face that you're going to be replacing. So I'm going to be using Mod Podge for that. You can try another kind of glue if you don't have Mod Podge. And a variety of paint colors that match the palette of the great work of art that you're going to be modifying. And paint brushes for that, water for cleaning your paintbrushes, scissors to cut out your pictures, and that should be about it. So I have my painting that I'm going to use here. So I have a printout of that that's going to fit your canvas, or be prepared to transfer it in some way to your canvas if you're not going to be able to glue it on. And then also a picture of what you're adding to the artwork. So in this case, I'm going to be substituting the face of this work of art, or the face right there, with my face. So you might need access to a printer to print something out, or you could have a photo reference like on your phone or your computer and add it in manually with a pencil. Up to you. So we're going to get started. I'm going to cover up my work area so that I don't get paint all over my table, and get some water here for my paints and Mod Podge, and then I'll show you what we need to do first. All right, my work area is all set up. So I got my canvas board ready to go, and my water and my Mod Podge. The Mod Podge is going to be the first step for me. The painting that I'm working with is called The Scream in English, and it's by Edvard Munch, who was a Norwegian artist. This is also known in its original language as The Shriek in Norwegian, and I'm not an expert on pronouncing Norwegian, but it's spelled S-K-R-I-K, Skrik perhaps, and also in German it's known as Der Schrei der Natur, the scream of nature. And I was reading an interesting Wikipedia article about this painting. It was painted back in 1893, and the artist was out taking a walk by the fjords on this boardwalk that you see here. The fjords in the background over there. And he felt kind of strange, kind of ill, and looked up at the sky, and the clouds were this blood red color all of a sudden, and it affected him very profoundly. He wrote about it in his journal, and later he made several artistic interpretations of that experience. He did a painting. He also did a couple of pastel versions of this, which are all slightly different. And he made a lithograph too, which is this sort of black and white print. A lithograph is where they use a stone to do the printing of it. So these would be, if there were more lithographs still available, they would all look the same. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to use this particular rendition of The Scream, and I'm going to cut it out and then paste it using the Mod Podge to my canvas board. But when I come back to paint it in later on, I'm going to use this as a color reference, because I'd like, now that I know what it was about The Scream that really affected the artist, like this very red sky, I kind of want to incorporate that red color into the painting that I do. So that's my particular choice. For whatever work that you choose to use, you may not be lucky enough to have a black and white copy to do that. So you can just use the full-on color if you want to, and then just paint like a paint by number the colors and try and blend them and match them as best you can. So that's the plan, everybody. I'm going to be adding my face to the face of the person in the scream here. So it's going to be me screaming rather than the artist or whoever this person represents here. But I recommend, if you're interested in this painting, reading more about it or researching more about whatever painting that you choose to use. You might find out something interesting. So, my painting is slightly smaller than my canvas, which is fine. I'm going to take off this white edge here and just cut around. And I'm not worried about this being too perfect, because I'm going to be gluing and painting, and I can go all the way to the edge of the canvas with my paint later on if I want to, or not. And if you're thinking about maybe framing this, then a white edge isn't going to matter too much anyway. If you watched my pet portraits video earlier, I show you a method for transferring a design to your canvas or to a piece of paper or cardboard. And to do that, if you want to, you would shade in the back here all the way, the whole thing, with pencil. I can show you super briefly. So you would do that, but all over the back of this. And then you would flip it over and then just draw on top with the pencil, and that will transfer the lines of the design onto your canvas, and then you wouldn't have to glue anything down. But we are going to glue. I am going to glue. So I was reading on the Mod Podge, on a Mod Podge crafter's site, some techniques for achieving your best kind of adhesion here without sort of pockets of air and lumpy bits. So they recommend painting first the canvas area where you're going to attach your paper. So I'm just going to put on a layer of Mod Podge here with my big paintbrush. If you have a bigger brush than this and you're covering a similar sized area, go ahead and use it, because you don't need to worry about detail or anything like that. You just want to cover this quickly as quickly as possible, and then glue down your artwork or the photocopy of your artwork. You're going to make it amazing. And once this is covered, we'll stick down the paper and then let it dry to the canvas. And then after that, we'll come back over and paint it on top with the Mod Podge. And let it glue down on the top too, and on the corners where there's space. And that should prevent those air bubbles that I was talking about from forming. So here we go. I'm going to kind of center it and then drop it and press. And if you're, you can see I'm getting little pockets of air anyway. If you're concerned about that happening, you can also use, if you have one, a brayer, which are those sort of plastic rollers or foam or metal rollers, depending what they're made out of, to press out all of these little air pockets. I am failing. I'm failing at my air pockets. I actually think the texture is interesting. See, this is an artistic choice accident that I'm just going to go with. So if your air pockets are not coming out and you don't have a brayer or any other way to flatten this out, don't worry about it. Just say, hey, this is how it's going to be. You could also put something heavy on it to flatten this out, or flip it over and put something heavy on the back. I have Mod Podge kind of around my edges already, so whatever I put on it is probably going to stick to it. So I'm not going to worry about it too much. I will just let what's on there dry and then paint over it with more Mod Podge. So we'll be back in just a little bit to do that. While we wait for that first layer of Mod Podge to dry, I'm going to cut out one of my photos here to add to my painting. I'm just doing a rough cut to start with, and then we'll match it up a little bit more carefully. Okay. So I'm going to try and keep some of my wild hair. You can give yourself a haircut. And the neck here is quite a bit skinnier, so we'll pare that down a little bit. Okay. If I want to get that hand in, I'm going to have to trim some more hair. So this side, we're losing some of the hair. Okay, that looks pretty good. And we can paint around this too so that it matches up even better. I like it though. All right, so I'm going to put this off to the side for a moment and then come back and put the Mod Podge on the top, and then we'll add our faces in the next layer. Mod Podging my life away. I'm just going around the edges of this first, because usually that is what sticks up the most. And on the same Mod Podge site that I was reading about all the amazing things you can do with Mod Podge, it said that painting over Mod Podge with acrylic paints works very well. Mod Podge is apparently acrylic based, so they play well together. And if you're worried about paint coming off of the Mod Podge or cracking or ripping or tearing or whatever it is that your acrylic paint might do to get off of your painting, you can just Mod Podge over it once it's dry. The key is just waiting for everything to dry nicely so that you don't pull your colors around with the Mod Podge. I'm using a glossy Mod Podge. There's a matte Mod Podge as well, and you can use whatever you prefer or whatever you happen to have on hand. There's a bit of an odor associated with Mod Podge, which I have mentioned in previous videos. So if that bothers you, use something else or work in a well-ventilated area. Although it is February right now as I'm making this, and temperatures this week have been in the minus range, so outside or your garage probably won't work super well for you for this time of year. But hey, you can do this any time of year. And I'm still getting some of these air pockets here. So I have what's going to be a 3D painting. I think what happened here is that there wasn't enough Mod Podge underneath my picture, and so it did not adhere to the canvas in that spot, and it just puffed up super nicely. So I could get it very wet, or if I'm worried about that, I think it's too late for me to pull it up and replace it, but I could slice through with like an X-Acto knife and get some of the Mod Podge underneath there to press that down some more. I'm just going to leave it. I'm leaving it. Okay, looks covered. That's what I said last time. It looks covered to me now, and I'm just going to let that dry for about 5 or 10 minutes. And you can see how it's kind of a milkier color where it's wet. So once that becomes clear and I can see the design all the way through and it's nice and shiny, then I will know that it's dry, and then I can put my face on. And we'll try to do the same thing with the face. So I'll paint some more Mod Podge over the top of that, stick my face down, and then let that dry, and then paint Mod Podge on top of that. So you can add elements wherever you want. It doesn't just have to be your face. It could be other things too. Cutouts from magazines or newspapers or books or something you're recycling. You could do a mashup of 2 different artworks and combine elements of both of those in your design. You can be as creative as you want to. So we're kind of doing a collage painting today. Face time. All right, so my face is going to go right in here over this other face. Try and get enough Mod Podge on there so that it actually sticks. And then we'll place it. And press it down. I'm actually, since it didn't work so much before, I'm just going to paint over it now. And I've already got my air bubbles, so we'll see how this works. So far so good. It's not bubbly, except where it was previously bubbly. All right, let that dry, and then we can paint. We are officially dried and ready to paint. So I've pulled up my reference photo here. Be sure to have yours on hand if you're at this stage. And I've just pulled a bunch of colors that I have that hopefully will match up with what's in this painting here in this photo. I may have to do some mixing too. So there's a lot of red in here, so I'm going to start with red and then add some of these other colors. So I'll put that a little bit off to the side. And that's that painting is even a little bit different than the lithograph that I've got going on here. So I'll get to make some artistic decisions along the way. And I am going to take over the borders here. That the bubbles under my under my painting are a little challenging to paint over, but we'll make it work. And right now I'm just using kind of a medium brush. This is the same brush I used to put on the Mod Podge, so in case you're wondering what size. I'm not doing any fine details here, so just getting some paint on. And the nice thing about acrylic paint is that you can paint over a lot of things or blend things as you go. So it's pretty forgiving. I took a watercolor class back in high school maybe, and we always had to start with the lightest colors first and then go darker, because watercolor is much harder to fix your mistakes with if you have them. You can paint over in darker colors with some success, but if you have a lighter color and you cover it up, uh-oh, that's it. So now this area of the sky in the painting that I'm looking at has some orange tones, but I'm just going to put in some of these red lines so that I can stop working with the red for a while when I switch colors. And it looks like there's a painted border on this side of it, or a post, I'm not sure what, so this part can be reddish too. The boardwalk area is kind of a reddish brown. I think that the idea is that everything, including those clouds, looked really red, and those the light was really weird, so just everything was kind of picking up that same tone. So everything's going to be a little bit red tinged in my recreation of this. And there's a little bit of red in the railing. And a little bit of red on the boardwalk too, but lots of other colors as well. Just a tiny bit of red there. If at any point you are satisfied with what you've created, even if it doesn't look completely like the original, you can stop painting and say, hey, that's good. I should do that right now, right? No, I will keep going. I'm going to get some of the orange in there. And there's a little bit of yellow, but it looks like it's blended with some white, so it's more of like a peachy beige, perhaps. I'm cleaning off my brush here and dipping into my orange, which is also in the sky. I'll compare them in a little while so that you can see how well I'm doing. If anything goes on too watery, like you didn't get enough of the water out of your brush when you cleaned it, go ahead and blot. You can blot your brush off, and you can also blot the painting itself. Just make sure you find a clean bit of paper towel or napkin or whatever you're using for that. And if it's too late for that, if you let the part of the painting dry where you want to make changes, you can just paint over it there. Add a little bit of the orange on the side here too. Mine might end up being very fiery red because I really like the intensity of the red. I've seen some fabulous sunrises and sunsets, but I don't know if I've ever felt the discomfort that Munch was talking about, where nature is just screaming. I've always felt like they're a little bit more benevolent than that. And over here is where there's some kind of beigey. I might put just a little bit of orange over there and then go back over it with some yellow in a little bit. And same thing with the boardwalk. There's some darker areas, but there is some orange and yellow and red in here. A bunch of different colors in the boardwalk. And we'll get some of the orange on the railing too. I'm actually okay with a black outline sort of playing a major role here. And then this area up in the fjord, where these little ships are, is also reflecting the sky too. It's not red so much as it is orange with yellow and a little bit of blue. So I'll fill in some orange here to prep for that. I'm trying to do larger areas right now, just to get that covered quickly, and then I can go back later on and add more details or smaller bits of color with a finer brush, smaller brush. This area around here where the land is very dark, and there's some sort of blue highlights to it. So I'm just going to leave that alone for right now and go back with black and blue later on and do that. Okay. Do I want to add something on the face? The hands are a little bit brownish, beigey, so I'll put a little bit of orange on those. And do it on the neck too. Okay, cleaning my brush, and I'm going to switch to yellow now. Everything's still pretty wet, so it's a good time for blending stuff, but not a great time to cover stuff up if that's what you're looking to do. So here's some of the yellow going in there. And I'll get some at the top right here too, so I can cover up my edges. My photo is trying to become part of this painting as well. And there's more yellow in the fjord. If I cover up these ships, I can go back later on and redefine them with my other brush. Okay, and then we'll get some of the yellow over in here too. On our boardwalk. There's just I'm going to wait to do, I think, maybe I'll add it now. I'll put a little bit of yellow on the railing here. And then there's some just around these people here. Okay. These areas are pretty dark, and move that up a little bit. These areas right here are pretty dark in my reference photo. So I think I'll clean the brush a little bit, and then I can kind of compare what they look like. So that's my lithograph that I'm working on, and then here's my reference photo. We're getting there. And the lithograph and the painting itself are actually pretty different. I'm going to pause here for a moment and let some of this dry. And we're back. We're going to fill in some of the dark areas now. So I'll get my paintbrush ready. And the black covers really well, it looks like. So these are not going to need me to go over multiple times. It looks like there's a building, maybe like a church or something in the background here, which is very hard to see in the painting, but in the lithograph it's more obvious. So I'm gonna leave that unpainted for now and try and make sure that it stays emphasized by using some lighter colors over there. Artistic decisions. And this area is pretty black. This is where some of the blues kind of come into it. So I will leave some space for blue, and then I can come back later on with the black and do more details. So these areas here are pretty dark. And then some of the boardwalk is dark too. Oh, and the person. The screamer is very dark. Nature and the person are screaming in this painting. And I'm going to use my finer brush to come back and do more details around the face and the arms and stuff. This is just for blocking in. There's a darker spot in the sky here. And up at the top a little bit too. Okay. I'm going to switch to, my finer brush and then get some of this blue paint on there so that I can do some details on the land. It's interesting that the water is not blue at all. That's because it's reflecting the sky there. So the blue is showing up in this landscape. But if you knew something about the painting, you might be confused about where the fjord actually is and where the land is, since the blue is on the land and not in the water. But there are some clues. There's the ships that are on the water there, and also this little church here, which probably would not be on the water. And in the sky, there's some of in these darker areas, it looks like they're tinged with a little bit of blue or green. So I'm going to try and emulate that with my painting too, and see if we can get it to look similar, if not the same. And there is a little bit of blue area in the water over here, kind of a curved line. It looks like a ripple coming out from something. So in the background, you're hearing my rabbit drinking. I actually took a break before to let this dry and to let him finish doing that, but Reason decided she was thirsty too, so we're back with rabbits in the background, and hopefully that's not too irritating. For me, it's kind of just like background noise that I don't really even notice much, except that it was super loud before. And there's a few blue lines over in this area too, so I'll just add them, and then if it looks like too much, we can go over later and paint over some of them. And there's a few sort of blue lines in this boardwalk. Now, the interesting thing about this lithograph is that some of the areas that are lighter on the painting are done in black on the lithograph so that you can get more of the detail of what's going on. So I have to decide whether I actually want them to be dark or not in the painting. And I'm making some creative choices here. I want you to be able to see where the railings are, so I'm adding some of the blue in here. I don't know if I'll keep it blue or if I'll make it some other color eventually, but since I covered up those little detailed lines that were in there, I want you to be able to see the railing still and where the spaces are. So mine's gonna look a little bit different, but that's all right. I like how it's turning out so far. I hope yours is also going well, whether you're doing this painting or some other one. The Scream is very adaptable, I guess, because you can add all kinds of things to this face, and it's been parodied and mixed a bunch of different times with different characters and whatnot. People like to mash it up with Van Gogh's Starry Night too, so you may have seen some of those before. It's fun. A few years ago we did a class at the library where we took not necessarily famous works of art, but works of art like you could find at the thrift store or something, like a painting in a frame, and then added goofy things to it, either that we painted in or that we found cutouts from in magazines and such. So we had like Loch Ness monsters and sea serpents added to pretty water landscapes, aquascapes, seascapes. Seascapes is the word I'm looking for. So that was kind of fun to do too. I think I added some like weird tentacle alien things too, like a very nice stone gate that had flowers growing around it. So that's another kind of take on this theme. Okay, I think I've blued the heck out of this. I want to create that that sort of yellowish beigey color maybe. Or maybe yellow will be just fine. I'm going to try the yellow first before I do anything to it, and fill in some of the areas like around my face and hands here that need more detail. This is nice for practicing your art skills too, like recreating famous paintings or trying to learn the techniques that those artists used. Looks like there's some yellow right at the, give myself a very shiny forehead and around the eyes.
If I get a lot of paint on here, it's gonna look I might lose some of the detail of my face. And that might be all right. Let's see what happens. I'm gonna keep the paint kind of light and drier, if that's possible, right here, so that I can gauge better when I want to stop working with it and when that's good enough. If I put a little bit of white in here too, that might tone down the yellow a little bit. That looks like a good idea. And the forehead is more orange, so I'll go back over to my orange and put a little bit more of that in here. Let's see. And then we're back to that sort of beigey color for a lot of it. There's a little bit of white off to the side here, or a lighter yellow. And it's a little bit darker, I guess, by my eyes. So I'm just blending a little bit of black in here to get in that area. And then the eyes on themselves are just like they're yellow with like a darker pupil, a black pupil. So I might leave my eyes the way that they are right now, and then just get a little bit more around the mouth. This area was a little bit darker. And this could make my teeth really pop out and do some white there. Just pull at the side of my white here, so I only have a little bit. Rawr.
I'm really screaming.
I have a little highlight or reflection in my eye, so I could, oh man, that's super spooky.
Okay.
And maybe I'll come back with a little bit of black. I don't know, it's going to be very small. Now it's a little frightening. And I'm being super careful not to pull that white from the teeth down into the mouth that I'm outlining. All right, I'm going to do something with the hair here. I'm careful because that's a little bit wet on the side as well. And then I had hair over here, which I removed so that we could see this hand better. So I'll paint a little bit over that, like it grew back.
Okay.
Cool.
So that looks pretty good. What else do I have to do? I need to get the lighter yellow, beigey color in some of these areas, at least a little bit darker. So I'm going to take some of the white over here and mix it with the side of my yellow so that I have a lighter yellow, and then just a tiny bit of black. And a little bit more yellow. That was maybe too much black. And a little bit more white.
Mix, mix, mix. It's almost a green now. All right, so we'll add some of that in. And then I can go back later and play with that. And that color is also in our fjord and also in our sky a little bit. And I'm going to put it up at the top here where my black is not doing a super good job of covering at the moment. I feel okay about making this look a bit different, especially since there are several versions of it that survived over time, and they all look a little bit different. The general, like the main idea is to get this very red sky, I think. So I have achieved that goal at least. And my personal goal of getting my face in there is I'm happy with how that has turned out. So I think I'm just going to leave what I've got there. I'm having more trouble with the borders here since I've decided to make some changes to those. Okay, let's see. I'm going to use some yellow to define this little church or whatever it is over in the background. And I might not leave it that light, but I do want to, remember where it is so that I can come back to it. And then there's more light areas in this lake. Lake, not lake, fjord. It looks like a lake to me, so that's what I keep thinking of it as. And things get lighter off in this corner. I would really like to fill in that area. And it's a little bit orange down here. Switching, and a little bit black right here. And then darker. Oops, I got a little bit too much water on my brush here. Whoops. I want to make sure that you can see the bottom where I'm painting. So I will let that dry and then do some of the blue over there so that carries through. And I'm going to go and define the border again, or whatever it is that's, you can see in the reference photo, there's either a border or something very tall. I don't know, like a post or something. Maybe he's coming through a gate. Not sure. I assume that this is the artist in the screen, but I'm not sure if that's actually correct. I might have to do some more research. Okay, and there's like half a person over here that has been cut off in the reference photo that I have. So I will paint that dude back in if I can. He's kind of walking, and he's got a little hat like the guy on his right. Okay, and since he is pretty wet right now, I'm gonna leave this white spot to fill in a little bit later and try and do something with this boardwalk down here now that that's drying. So I'm gonna add some orange in there. And it's actually lighter on the side here in the reference drawing or reference photo I have. And the darker areas are over in here. So maybe the light is coming down this way. So I'll try and mimic that. And the textures were very different on the lithograph and the painting. Like the painting looks like wood, like those are wood panels. But in the lithograph, it's just lines, and you can see those peeking through. So it's a different look for that area. I'm doing more of the mixing on my palette now. I feel like I'm getting towards the end, so I can worry a little bit less about my colors mixing together. Were you worried about that? Okay, this part was very bright down here, so plenty of yellow is going to be okay. And then there's darker areas. So black is kind of too dark, so I think I might do like a red mixed with a little bit of black. And hope that that looks kind of brownish. We'll see. So take a little bit of black and grab the corner of the red. That's pretty good. Okay. And put some of that in our boardwalk. We'll try and confine it to out of that bright area. Oh, and the guys who are walking up here could be casting shadows behind them too. That's a possibility. I'm going to lighten that up with a little bit of yellow right around here. And this is still pretty dark up in here, so we'll get some black in there, but not too much. And some black coming down this way. I'm going to do it from where the men are walking so that it does seem to be their shadows. Some dark areas here. And it looks like there's some there too. And this was a little bit watery before, so go over it again. Okay, and then dry that off well. I wanted to add some more blue in here. Great, that looks good. And then up at the top where I have some of the sky happening, I'm gonna mix my blue with a little bit of black over here, and then just try and bring that through the sky. I'm gonna get a little bit more water on there so that I have less of that texture popping through with the canvas. I want it to be kind of smooth. Okay, and I do have to, let's see, I have to do something about this. And something about the boats too, to define them. So let's see. I have this green that I haven't really used. I thought it might work in the sky, so maybe I'll add a little bit here where I'd created that sort of more olivey green. And then I'll add a little bit to this building here. And then, it's very bright now. And then a little bit of black over that so it's not quite so bright. Okay, now we know there's something there. And then I do want to do the black on the boats. So clean my brush off really well and make sure it's dry. And do the boats. I left a little bit of them peeking through so I kind of have an idea of where they are. Although some of the shape has been lost, but you can see a little bit of them in the reference photo too. So it doesn't have to be perfect. Maybe it's very windy out there too. And then we'll define a little bit more around the fjord with some black. That looks pretty good. She says, as if surprised. All right, and then some black over in here just to cover up some of those very aggressive lines from the lithograph with some more painted ones that I'm doing. Still going well for everybody, I hope. And then there's some black along here, defining the railing again. And I'm going to go around in black around the hands, just so it's pretty clear where those are. It's pretty clear on this side. Okay, and in this area, make a little bit more black. Maybe some over in here. Okay, and then up by this man, I think I want to make that orange. And he looks pretty dry at this point, so we should be safe to get in there. So up here, we're making a little orange. Okay, what do you think? Do we need anything else on the front here, maybe? Maybe something to define the sleeves. Just a little bit of orange there. And there's a sleeve and an elbow kind of right in that area. Okay, and then the other thing I said I was going to do, so there's a couple of areas. I just want to get on the side here and get that border nice and even again. I went a little bit outside there. So we'll do the black and the red combination because it was a little bit darker. I'll just paint over that a little bit. Okay, that's good. And then at the top here again, I kind of want some more blending of those colors. So I'm going to take some red, I think, and try and get that a little bit more covered. I'm grabbing a little bit of that darker red that we mix with the black. Okay, looking good. All right, I'm going to call that done. So here we have my rendition, and next to it, the original. So they look a little bit different, but I think I got the gist of it. So I'm pretty happy with how that turned out. Hope you are too. Last thing before we sign off, once this is all dry, you can paint over it again with Mod Podge if that was something you were using to begin with, and then that'll just seal it up really nicely. And let that dry, and then you can hang it up, give it away, do whatever your plans are for it. Thanks for joining me for this week's Crafternoon. I hope you had fun adding yourselves to famous artworks. And for more ideas and fun things to do, check out our website, www.huntleylibrary.org.